In this example, the Python class we are building is a tic-tac-toe playing robot that uses AI. When we're using Gemma in a Gemini API, the heart of our robot is the generate content method of the API client, and initially we have two parameters we're using. The first is the name of the model. The second is contents, which is the instructions we want the model to use for each call we make for a move. That may sound like a strange name for the instructions, but keep in mind these are instruction-tuned models, and so they're really expecting contents to be the entire conversation, not each step separately. The first Gemma 4 feature that we want to add that we weren't able to do in Gemma 3 is we want to add system instructions. And so there's a link to the documentation for this out in Canvas. So if you go to the module for week 14 and we pull up the slides here, if we scroll on down a little bit to not those pages, but here we go, system instructions. If we click here, this brings up the documentation for system instructions. This is again going into our generate content method that we looked at already. And here we're adding another parameter. We're adding one called config. And what we're doing is we're able to divide out the system instructions, which is where you're telling the model sort of its role, what its overall instructions should be, maybe how it should play tic-tac-toe, what the strategy is, that it's a tic-tac-toe player, how the game works, that sort of thing. And then in the contents, we're going to slim that down. That's going to be just the instructions that it should be following for doing a specific move. And so from out here in the instructions, we can just grab this. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this config parameter. We want to make sure we include the comma there because it's going to be just in between our model and our contents parameter. So let me copy that. And then if we go back to our code here, and I go, and right after this model, I'm just going to put in a new line. And we're going to say, here's our system instructions. Right now, the example they had was talking about a Kyoto Tea Master, and that's not what we're doing. We're doing a tic-tac-toe master, I guess you could say. So I'm going to go ahead and take these out and cut it back to just being an empty string for a second here. Okay, so we've got a placeholder now for our system instructions. Our contents here, then, the instructions we have here should still be the instructions for doing a specific move. You'll notice up here for our instructions, what we're doing is we're calling a method we created inside this class called getInstructions. And if we scroll on up there, you'll see all this is really doing is giving us a string that we're returning and then inserting into our API there. Here we've embedded a few, such as telling what player it is and telling it the current state of the board, that sort of thing. And so what we want to do is we want to break this up. We want to say what part of this should be the system instructions, telling it sort of about tic-tac-toe and what its role is and how it should play, and what part should just be saying, now it's your turn, make a move. And so we're going to use Gemini chat for our checker players, and so what we might want to do is do the same thing here. Say, well, we could sort of figure out on our own how we want to break this up, but we could also use Gemini chat. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Gemini chat. I'm going to take these instructions, I'm going to put them into Gemini chat and say, you know, here's my system, here's my instructions for a tic-tac-toe game. What I want you to do is break it into system instructions and then instructions for each move. And then I can bring that back into my program. So here I'm now in Gemini chat, and I've started a new chat. And I type rather slowly, so I'm going to copy paste my prompt in. So let me paste this in here. And so let me see if I can scroll up here a little bit to show you what I've got here. So the first thing I did was I said, you know, basically I want you to be Gemma to be a robot player in tic-tac-toe. And I'm showing you the prompt that I already have. And I want to separate it into system instructions telling the LM how to play, and then user instructions to tell the LM it's their turn and to make a move. And then I tell it that I embedded a few class attributes so it knows what those are, so it knows it can put those in there also, telling it, are you an X and an O, and what the board looks like. And I also say at the end there, I say my current prompt, and I tell it, go ahead and improve it. May as well get it to do some extra work for me here. And then I just had pasted it in below, and so you'll see below is the prompt we had before. Here's one we had already, when we were in class, we found that Gemma 3 was cheating and was returning more than just the tuple we wanted. So we'd already had made some modifications to it. And so I'm going to go ahead and, we told it not to cheat also. So I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to pick Pro here just to make sure I get the best result I can. And I'm going to go ahead and click play, and it's going to go off and sort of do its thinking thing and run through the process. It's going to figure out here, it's figuring out how to split it between the system instructions and the user instructions. And we'll see what it comes up with here. And so it's all done, and first it's always congratulating us, so it's telling us it's a fantastic idea to break it into system instructions and user instructions, which most of the better models will have that, ones that you pay for. And so it's great that they're adding that to Gemma 4, and we can use it and use it for free. And then it says here's how it divided it up, and it actually built on it. It added some more instructions to what I already had. And so then it also had user instructions on here, and here it embedded those class attributes as far as which player it was and who the opponent was, and then also what the state of the board is. And so it's created these two variables, and so what I can do is back in that get instruction method that we already had, I can take these, copy them, paste it in there, have it write those, and then we'll just return both of them. We'll return the system instruction and the user instructions, and then unpack it in our get move method. So let me go ahead and do that. So first we'll grab the system instruction here, and then we'll go back here. And so we have our get instruction. I'm just going to put in a couple blank lines here. I want to delete my existing instruction until I know I've got something in there. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. The indenting doesn't matter so much here because it's in the parentheses, but I'm going to go ahead and indent it just a little bit so it doesn't confuse me later. And then I'm going to indent this also. Okay, and so those are my system instructions, and now I'm going to get I'm also going to get the user instructions that it wrote for me. I come down here, grab these and copy them. Also, in all cases, you could also just click the little copy code button, and that would have worked too. But it's a little less obvious that I'm clicking the button, so I just actually copied it. And so here's my user instructions. Again, I'm going to come down here and just scoot all this in and done it a little bit. And so I really don't need these instructions anymore. If I wasn't sure, if I'm like, maybe I'll want them at some point, I can always comment them out. Since we can always do something called triple quoting, and it can be multiple lines. So here we've got a bunch of quotes inside it, so I'm going to use single quotes here. And if I put 3 there, and I come on down here, and after this line, I put in a blank line, I'll put my 3 quotes in there. You notice that's commented out now, so it's not going to do anything, but it's still not deleted. Later I'd want to come back and clean this up a little. And so right now it's returning just the instructions we had. And so we now have system instructions and we have user instructions. Right, it's called system instruction and user instruction. No plural there. I used to have a plural, so instead of returning instructions, I'm going to return my system instruction, and then start typing user, it'll pop it up. So now my get instruction returns both. And so that's, if I scroll on down here, back to my get move, all I have to do is say, well, I'm going to say instructions, and I'm going to say system instructions and instructions. So I'm unpacking the two variables I get back, and so now I can just highlight that and copy it in, and I'm going to replace, I don't want to put it in side quotes, so that'll be what I'm actually telling it. And so this might look a little bit weird. We're saying system instruction equals system instructions. Even if we said exactly the same, I have an S on the end, a little plural there. It doesn't matter, because the first one, this one, is the parameter name for the generate content config method here. And then the other one is our variable name that we created up here, so it won't get confused between those two. Then for the contents down here, I'm going to say, well, I just want to have those instructions, so I'm going to use, maybe I'll call that, I'm going to call this user instructions, so it doesn't get confused. And so that's all there is to adding system instructions to it. Because we did it in Gemini chat, if we don't like them, we can edit them. We could edit them in our method here if we just want to do a few tweaks. If we're looking at it going, wow, I really want to have it do sort of another iteration, I want to have it add a lot to it, we can go back. It saves all the chats. So even if we come back 2 days later, we can click on that chat and pick it up where we left off. It'll just start the conversation going again. And we can say, well, you know, I like what you did, but I want you to add this, or to also talk about this feature of the game, or this aspect of the game. So that finishes it up for system instructions.